Hi, I'm Garrett Sloan, Chief Technology Reporter at AdAge, and you are watching remotely. Today's guest is Gary Vaynerchuk, Chairman of VaynerX, CEO of VaynerMedia, CEO of VeeFriends, and he's a legacy blue check mark on Twitter. So, hi, Gary. Good to talk to you again.
I like that last part, Garrett. It's great to talk to you. I hope you're well.
Definitely. And let's get into it because I only have you so long and we have so much to get into. And one of the best parts about interviewing you is I get to Google your name and see new things every day is something coming out, something you said, somewhere you've been. You're an extreme talker sometimes, which we all appreciate. One thing, this was interesting. So I saw Inc. pulled out a LinkedIn post from you 2 months ago, and they said, keep all meetings to 15 minutes. Too many hour-long meetings should be 7 minutes. So this is now your new wisdom of the day today. I was wondering if you would tell me how much pain are you in that this meeting is more than 15 minutes?
Any time with you, Garrett, is always too little time. So I'm happy with this being longer than 15 minutes. But, the point of that post, a lot of people have been talking about capacity efficiency. It's been a really interesting theme for the last several years of me trying to dissect what I see works in our organization and other organizations. Are there any common themes? And I genuinely do believe that one of the things that hurts a lot of people is meetings run long and meetings have too many people in them. I think all of us are striving for good work cultures for our employees, and there's a lot of things one can do, but I really do think helping educate the value of a 2-hour meeting with 21 people, if that meeting happened to be, 45 minutes with 7 people, miraculously a lot of hours are freed up for people to be able to achieve what they need to in a day. And so just spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to eliminate anxiousness, lack of productivity. And I do think meetings is one of the big culprits out there.
What's a meeting like with you? Do you jump in and the time is set for 15 minutes or it's still impossible to even change?
I mean, literally the meeting I had right before this was 15 minutes, but only took 7. I do think a good 15-minute meeting, especially when you have capable executives, you can get right into it. I mean, I'm thrilled for banter and jokes, and I love all that stuff too, quite a bit. I probably am a culprit of making meetings go too long with a little bit of the side dish or bringing some of the emotion to it. But I really like to get to the heart of the matter. I think that's important. And I think a lot of times, even in the context of our industry, sometimes the best ideas for a campaign or a marketing execution sometimes happen within the first 30 minutes. I find a lot of fresh ideas or the first take or the intuition of the most capable creative people. I think they sometimes talk themselves out of stuff the longer they stay in stuff. And so, it runs the gamut.
Get to it. And then I had to ask you because the other proclamation this year was Super Bowl commercials are worth the money. They're undervalued, is what you had said. And you're a Super Bowl advertiser now. You've been getting more and more business in the Super Bowl with brands. So, why is the Super Bowl undervalued? Lay it on me.
Garrett, I think one of the biggest elephants in the room in our industry is reach and frequency, is something I believe in heavily as well. It's just that I think our industry speaks about reach and frequency as if it's actually being consumed, as if the reach is actually being consumed. My brain, Vayner's point of view, is that there's potential reach and there's actualized reach. And I believe that the Super Bowl is disproportionately the strongest actualized reach advertising that we have in America. And so, look, it's a huge ticket. I don't laugh at $7 million or sneeze at it. But when you can get 100 million Americans to actually pay attention and actually consume it, that's very different than the Oscars. That's very different than the NBA Finals. That's very different than anything you can do on digital. It's just, I feel like when you really get to the matter, and we're not robots yet, AI has not been implanted in us and all this other stuff. So we don't know the actualized consumption of all the reach that we do in all platforms. But I think everyone in our industry can absolutely agree that Super Bowl's actually being consumed. The problem is you have to make the creative land, right? The creative is still the variable. So you can blow it, but the media planning, the comms of it, the planning of the media, I think is the strongest in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's obviously we pay attention to the ads much more than the game, and a lot of people do. But this is not a gotcha, I'm going to ask. But I was thinking about this when I was thinking about your Super Bowl proclamation that there's value here. And then I was trying to think, is there value? What is can I even remember a Super Bowl commercial just from a month ago? Do you have any that you didn't do at VaynerMedia that you even remember?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm always in a tricky spot because I'm not watching at home. I'm usually at the game because I'm an avid football fan. So I didn't consume the commercials this year, but I thought the Tubi commercial really caught my attention because I'm big on, right? I'm big on like breaking patterns. I think it's, this world is noisy. You know this. You and your contemporaries do such a great job covering this industry, and you're taking in on a daily basis a trillion campaigns just on a daily basis. Think about how that plays out over the course of the year. So to break through to these 300 million Americans, or even more importantly, 8 billion people global, it's hard. So I thought what they did was very clever because they played the utility of the whole thing. They shocked everyone. They made them stop and they made them pay attention. And I think that was really, really well done. And so that one kind of took the cake for me because it wasn't about like, oh, cool, there's this cool actor in it, or oh, cool, that was funny or silly or emotional. It was functional. And I thought that was very clever.
Yeah, I can't deny the Tubi ad does stand out as a memorable one right now. And I'm going to press you on this because you posted a YouTube video. You have 4 million followers there. So you're pretty good at YouTube. And so you post just I guess what your fans want to see from you about what you know about the industry or various subjects. So this one you post from the Sonic Automotive Houston conference. And this was just a couple weeks ago video. Good one. But you said newspapers are ridiculously overpriced. They're dying, so they're charging you more. So as a print journalist, first, I have to say, how dare you? But seriously, I don't think it's past worship. We were talking about like what's a memorable ad or what's or what's valuable, like the Super Bowl to actually get there and be in someone's hands. Is there what do you think is newspapers not?
Look, the point I was making in that talk and really my overall passion of being in this industry is layering common sense against pricing, against actual consumer behavior. And so my point with print is, and listen, I was a heavy advertiser on print in the late 90s, early 2000s. I would argue that print along with Google AdWords is how I built my dad's wine retail business. But when I look at what print is asking for full page ads in top publications today versus its current circulation versus the common sense of are people actually consuming that ad in the print format or are they consuming the information? I think it's a real challenge to justify the rates when you can be doing, I would argue outdoor is a stronger ROI, even though a lot of people are looking at their phone in the car now, and that's got its own challenges. Look, I'm not just blindly digital. I think a lot of digital advertising is really bad and overpriced. I think a lot of pre-roll, I think a lot of banner ads, I think a lot of the programmatic digital ads are just there to spray and pray and disrupt, and I don't believe they're being consumed. But I'm not super fond of the costs associated with print ads as a whole. There's always places where you can find pockets of value. I think if you're really thinking about traditional means, I think drive time radio is a more interesting dollar spent. And so, yeah, that was the point I was making. And it was also contextual. I was talking to an industry that spends quite a bit of money, a lot of money there. And I think underspend in some of the contemporary social aspects where I think they would get more relevance in actual consumption.
Yeah, and you didn't hold back on digital in that same talk. And you also mentioned this push to be in the future with VR. Should I be selling cars in VR? What should I be doing with VR? And then you said there's like 9 people in VR. Are you in VR at all? I don't know how many people are there.
I look at Web3 a lot. I've done a lot of work in it, but I don't believe that humans are in VR devices yet at any kind of scale that anybody in the ad age audience would be interested in. I think the ad age audience is a little over romantic about the past. and values the past a little too much. Some group of us in Fortune 5000 marketing, Fortune 500 marketing, we get overzealous of the future and we do things in VR and things as such. And our hypothesis is that there's an underestimation and an undervaluing of today. And I think today, it's funny. Sometimes I always, I have a funny thing that I like dream up. What would I call the company if I knew it better when I called it VaynerMedia? And one of the things I think about, I would call my agency is today, because I think I realize a lot of our growth over the last 13 years and what I think is making us sustainable and keeping our clients and what's working is we do have a deep obsession about today. I'll give you a good one that's probably on a lot of our minds. You can't imagine how many times, Garrett, a day I get text, emailed, or DM'd about what happens if TikTok gets banned.
I was going to ask you.
Great. So I'm glad I was able to jump in. My answer is nothing and everything. What do I mean by that? We follow attention. If TikTok is banned, that's above my pay grade. That's a US government decision. We then realize the next day, you're talking about hundreds of millions of people's attention is going to be reallocated. So what happens the next day? We triple down on shorts. We triple down on Spotlight on Snap. We triple down on Instagram Reels. We quadruple down on Facebook Reels, which we're finding a lot of winning with right now. So, to me, we focus on today. We keep an eye on tomorrow because we want to be ready for AI at scale. We want to be ready for VR at scale. We want to be ready for AR at scale. And then we challenge for a common sense consumer debate around yesterday. Is the production cost to this commercial that's going to run on television, is that really ROI positive against the attention and consideration that it would create? And so I'm not social media'd out. I'm not digitaled out. I mentioned my affinity for drive time radio earlier in this interview. I'm off the charts on Super Bowl. I think influencer marketing is incredibly underpriced and or overpriced if you don't know how to do it. We try to stay unemotional, but we try to focus on today and we try to focus on brand building and driving sales or results today.
Now let's get into VeeCon because this is coming up. Is there news to share about what's planned there? What do you have going on? It's we'll get into what the event is in a second, but anything to say up front?
Up front, the coolest thing I think for VeeCon, again, for this audience, back to relevance, is unlike last year where we used it to really educate people on Web3, this year it's really a business, marketing, innovation, and pop culture conference. So I think the biggest thing that I'm excited about is we're not locked in with everyone. Everyone's juggling their schedules, but I think we're going to push somewhere close to 50 Fortune 500 CMOs as speakers at this conference. So I'm excited about that because it's May 18th to the 20th in Indianapolis, Indiana at Lucas Oil Stadium,
right,
which is a month before Cannes. And so I had this funny talk with somebody in the office the other day. I was like, oh man, the way this is shaping up this year, it's almost like a pre-event for Cannes. There's going to be so many of the individuals that are going to be there. And so I'm kind of excited about that. 10,000 people will be in attendance. We've got like really incredible speakers. We've got Busta Rhymes doing opening night, which is a lot of fun for our 90 pop, hip hop heads like myself. Andrew Schultz, the comedian, is going to be doing a set. We're excited about that. People like Neil Patrick Harris, Damon Johns are going to be there. Boz St. John, who's made a lot of noise in our industry here. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, are any of the guests that are the CMOs, are they owners of VFriend NFTs, which was the origin of this project? And we could talk about NFTs probably for another hour.
Yeah, the answer is I'm not sure. I don't have a real read on who's holding it. That wasn't any kind of requirement. What we're trying to do is bring the best content. I'd like to think some of them do, but I'm also aware that was very early technology. And then like the content I was making late that summer, all the, short-term greed really created a scenario where a lot of the projects were destined to fail. And we saw that similar to the late 90s with internet stocks. This is a perfect example, Garrett, of people getting ahead of the technology and overvaluing tomorrow. I think we need more patience. But yeah, I'm excited about the conference. I'm excited about the NFT space in its correction. I think we'll see true building now, not collectible hysteria. And And then obviously we didn't get a chance to talk about AI, but I know that's at the top of everyone's mind in the industry right now, the ChatGPTs, the Jaspers, the Midjourneys. And I mean, here's the one thing, you and I are very lucky. We are living in marketing during mass transformation.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I'm on my toes all the time because of just everything that's changing and the industry's dynamic. You have, Twitter changes ownership. You're a big Twitter user. What do you think? Because you're a positive Twitter user, if I think you could say so. Like, you're generally on there, say good morning,
Yep.
got this cool stuff. But then there's this other just wave of angst on Twitter. How do you avoid that? And what do you think under new ownership, what brands should do about that?
I think brands need to make the decisions for themselves. We're, as an agency, we're always in support of what brands make decisions, and we follow that lead. Look, I don't think we can avoid angst or negativity, period. There's angst and negativity in traditional media. There's angst and negativity on websites. There's angst and negativity on literally every platform, from TikTok to Facebook to Instagram to Snapchat. These platforms are empty and humans are filling them. And I think that there's just a lot of angst in general in society, and that's showing up on these platforms, just like when there was optimism and euphoria when these platforms showed up 15, 20 years ago. I think that's just the bell curve. I think humans are being exposed. I think that a lot of people have to work on gratitude and accountability and putting things into perspective. But I'm very empathetic to why there is so much angst. And so, I think as far as brands, if brands are being honest and not hypocrites, they will see angst and negativity on every single platform that they do marketing on. And, that's up to brands to make decisions on where they want to be and where they don't want to be.
Yeah, and this kind of goes to, you had mentioned yours in the talk that you had in Houston, you were talking about the people who look at the past, people who should be looking at today, people are too optimistic about future things that they shouldn't worry about right now.
Yes.
And you mentioned my Silicon Valley friends are sometimes like that.
Yes.
Silicon Valley friends, Silicon Valley Bank was interesting. This was a bank run born on Twitter. So I think that's where some of the wait a minute, what is going on Twitter? There's a bank run which is like a democratic movement arises. Anything can pop up and it just has a wave and this hit. So I'm wondering what you think. This technology could be scary.
I want to make sure I understand the question. You're saying that once the news started flowing on Twitter, that created a bank run.
I think it was part of help fuel it partly. And
I think you're right. The world is connected at scale. And so to your point, and it's a tremendous call out, there are dynamics that we have not thought through that can happen. And we saw it, to your point earlier, with like the Reddit movement and the Twitter movement on some of the, Reddit stocks. And, look, we're living in a different world.
Definitely.
I think, when the world is connected and information is connected, and plus we also have people that are headline readers at scale now. People just have deep, passionate stances on reading one thing without doing any homework on anything other than the headline. That's a vulnerable state, and that is the state we were in.
Yeah. Reddit's an interesting study too, which is, like you said, there are all these platforms that you have to think about each of them. So it's very, it's a complicated issue.
It's a complicated issue, but we have no choice. It's the reality of the world. A different complicated issue was the 1950s when there was only 3 media outlets. And if they decided not to give you exposure, you were doomsday. So it's kind of one of these things where you ebb and flow with the reality of your world. To your point earlier, I prefer to be a practical, optimistic contributor. I don't see any value in tearing people down, especially when I don't have any of the details. I like giving people the benefit of the doubt. I believe in the power of forgiveness. And, and these are things that matter to me. And I'm very fortunate because they were instilled in very good parenting. So I'm a little bit of luck of the draw there. And I hope those things prevail. And I believe they will in the end, because I think the human spirit has proven that over the last thousands of years.
Now, got to talk about the future. We did mention AI, and I can ask you a little bit about that, because this is another, after it was Web3 or NFTs, which are still around, but the craze and hype around them has simmered. Now it's AI.
Yes.
And the hype and craze around that is, oh, it's got to be in every product, ship AI everywhere. I don't know, how do you feel about the moment, and what is it going to do for advertisers in VaynerMedia?
In Vayner right now, we're being cautious. I think one of the things that we recognize is we don't know the source of the information. So as you can imagine, Garrett, we're trying to be very thoughtful of like copyright and trademark. Those are things we need to be very careful of. So we're kind of quote unquote staying away from it right now, other than using it internally and trying to get a sense of it, make sure we're not behind the bell curve. You know, I think it's going to make the world more interesting. I think it's going to commoditize some things that is going to change the landscape, no different than the tractor did for farming. So, but I also think it's going to help the critical thinkers and the most creative in our industry. I think once you grasp how to be good at AI, it's the critical thinking and the creative thinking input that people are going to put into these algos, into these platforms, into these search bars. And I think it's going to create really dynamic work. And so I think at first people are going to meet it with fear. They did that with the internet. They did that with social media. They did that with the iPhone. But I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have a more healthy view on it that I find will be balanced, meaning there'll be some pros and there'll be some cons like everything. But I think for our industry, I believe the most creative people in our industry are going to flourish in an AI world, because she or he is going to be able to input so many different creative takes into these AI infrastructures, and they're going to get output that's going to be meaningful, and they're going to be able to build on that. And I'm actually pretty excited what it's going to mean for the creative class.
And you, with it, like with NFTs, you got in with VeeFriends and you put your hands into it to understand the mechanics of what is this, what are we doing here, and how does it work? With AI, what are the ways you're going in there and checking it out? Is there any fun ways you've tried to just see what this is all about?
Very similar to, you know, to me, it's more of a B2B thing than a B2C thing right now. And so for me right now, it's just using it. It's becoming a practitioner of it, typing in things, you know, doing all the silly things that everybody else is doing. Like, tell me the Gettysburg Address in Mike Tyson's voice as if it was 2017, you know, just learning, trying to be creative. And I'm excited about it, but I think it's very early. I think back to what I did on search engines in 1995-6 on Ask Jeeves and Dogpile and early Yahoo. I would say that those were very elementary searches compared to what I'm able to do today. And so I'm excited to see where the future is on this as a whole.
All right. And I guess to just finish off maybe a little bit, I got to get a little more understanding of where you are on the TikTok position. This is at the moment right now where next week TikTok CEO speaks to Congress. This is a treacherous moment for the company.
Yeah, my position is very simple, that if the US government deems that there is things that are inappropriate and that they can't allow because of foreign interference from their point of view, then they will ban it, and then we will adjust. I'm to your point, I love talking, but I love talking about things I know. I know nothing about what's underneath the hood of what people are concerned about at the highest levels of our government. And so my position is what it always is. I stay within my lane and within my pay grade. I, for a living, pay attention where consumer attention is. And I try to figure out where that is, and I figure out how to bring value to that attention through written form, audio, video, and pictures. If TikTok's off the board, that attention goes, like we said earlier, to a lot of new places, and it will be mine and my agency's job to understand CTV, fast TV, social, traditional, digital 1.0, linear, like where has that attention gone? And how do we fill that with compelling messaging to create relevance and consideration for the outcomes that we want?
And just to finish off, very last year, what is this year? What's your passion? Because you always have something just forward thinking. What is the outside the box technology you're thinking about?
Obviously, we touched on all of them. AI is very important to me. Right now, I'm very focused on this thing we call PAC, platforms and culture. We believe the way to win in social is to be great at understanding the platforms, the algorithms, the features, what filters work. What are you able to do on them? Is it a carousel this? Is it a reel over an in feed? And then the culture, what's happening in pop culture? Who are the most interesting musicians? What meals are emerging? What restaurants? What regions in America? Is fishing culture doing this? You know, what's the summer anthem going to be? What's the, like, culture? If you do those two things extremely well, the output of the creative you do in social can be affected by that. If you do that well, the consumer insights, both quant and qual, that you can get out of that kind of work really can feed your above the line and brand building. And so, like, I have a very deep obsession right now. I'm being a global practitioner. We're exploding in APAC and LATAM and EMEA. And so, you know, just got back from Dubai. We're starting to strategize our Middle East expansion. Just kind of hungry and ambitious while trying to make sure we over deliver for everyone who's believed in us.
All right. Well, we'll pay attention when you're at VeeCon and try and see who all the big speakers are. We're looking forward to checking that out, and
Thank
just
you, brother.
see you coming up. I know I will.
It's really nice to see you again. I wish you well.
Thank you, Gary. And I'm Garrett Sloan. This has been Remotely with Gary Vaynerchuk. And please stay tuned for upcoming events at AdAge, like the Web3 Marketing Summit, May 9th and 10th, and our Creator Summit, April 4th. So please join us.